Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
I, male, 30, have been no contact with my dad, Hank, 58, for the last 10 years and have only had interaction with my mom. Our relationship was already on shaky ground as he had divorced my mom, 55, when I was 16 to get with his secretary, Kiara, female, 37 right now, who was closer to my age than his. It was obvious that she was a gold digger, and I and my sister, female 27, both agreed to this. How Dad decided it was okay to break apart decades of a loving relationship to go after a woman who was an entire generation separated from him, I don't know. The divorce ended up granting Mom full custody, and we had pretty minimal contact with Dad. He had moved to the New Haven with Kiara, while Mom, Sis, and I stayed in Connecticut. At first, he used to show up for birthdays, and then it cut down to calling us on our birthdays, and then turned to basically nothing. Credit where it's due. He paid alimony and child support on time, as he was running a hugely successful business, but emotionally, this guy was barely there. When I turned 18, I got an amazing opportunity. I had gotten into Yale, but due to a bunch of housing mix-ups and a few administrative hurdles, I didn't get a dorm room on campus, so I began to look around at places to rent nearby. Naturally, I called Dad and asked him for advice, and he did something super generous. He asked if I would like to move in with him. I was taken aback at first and told him I'd let him know after I consulted my mom about it. She was enthusiastic about the idea, and it would help me save up some money and also provide a chance to build a relationship with my dad. She knew that I resented him a lot, but it had been 2 years since the divorce, and she thought I should at least try and have a connection with him. Urged on by her logic, I called Dad back and gave him the green light. I'd stay in his guest bedroom for the first semester at least and see how it goes. After I turned college and moved in, I'll admit Dad was a really good guy to room with. He was fun, had interesting and useful advice about college life, and genuinely took an interest in me and my coursework. We often went out on weekends, going to do goofy stuff like paintballing or go-karting. It was a lot better than I expected, and while I made it clear that I still thought he was an ass for hurting Mom, I was open to the idea of fostering a relationship with him. However, Kiara didn't enjoy my presence at all. I mean, she didn't do anything outwardly mean with me, but there was just something about her vibe that was off. Whenever I was around, she was incredibly shitty. Sometimes it almost felt like my presence there was obstructing some grand plan she had. But as I said, it was just a vibe. I couldn't prove anything was off. Maybe she just didn't like the fact that a remnant of my dad's old life had come to stay, and she knew that I thought she was a gold digger, so there's that too. I mean, she was living off of Dad's money. She didn't work, but stayed at home most of the day. Sometimes she'd go out shopping or on trips around the area. Trophy wife much? I looked at her as an extra roommate, and she thankfully never tried to act like my mom. My suspicions about her behavior got confirmed one afternoon. Dad had gone out for a week on a business trip, and I had been staying at a friend's place working on research paper together. Kiara was alone at the house for a week, or was at least meant to be. However, I had left some of my laundry at Dad's place and went over to pick it up with the spare key he had given me. When I got over to the house, I saw a car in the driveway that wasn't ours. Slowly walking in, I heard loud chatter and laughter from the living room and eavesdropped. There was a male voice and a voice that was Kiara's talking about embezzling money from Dad's company. It was brazen. I heard the male voice say, "We made some changes in accounts receivable, and there's about $100,000 in unrecorded revenue. That's for us, and it's all risk-free. If anyone takes the rap for it, it'll be Hank." I was shocked, and I needed to know who this guy was. For some reason, his voice sounded familiar, so I peeked around the corner and saw Dad's accountant. He'd often come over to the house to discuss Dad's assets and investment opportunities, but I had never seen him so buddy-buddy with Kiara. They were chatting up a storm, celebrating with 2 glasses of wine. If I had to guess, this relationship wasn't just two con artists working together, but it was sexual too. Making sure I wasn't noticed, I slunk back out and relocked the door. Unfortunately for me, all I had to prove this to Dad was my word. I hadn't taken any pictures or gotten any concrete proof. However, I was hoping I could convince him as soon as he came back from his trip. Once he did, I told him about what had happened in private, and he immediately laughed it off. He said that his accountant had always had his back, and this idea of unrecorded revenue was something his eagle eye would spot anyways. I guess he had a big ego about how much of a grip he had on the business, because when I pushed on the topic, he got offended. That first conversation ended without much happening, but I knew that Dad would probably mention this to Kiara, probably joking about the wacky storm I had come up with, dismissing it as a joke. Once this happened, I knew that she was onto me. Her attitude towards me became even colder, and for some reason, Dad also began talking to me less and less. One day, he sat me down and told me to respect boundaries, stating that Kiara had told him that I had been flirting with her. I told him this was a lie, but yet again, he believed his wife more than me. The final straw came when one day, Kiara pretended like I had tried to make a move on her while Dad was in another room, and she put on a good act. Since Dad was already wrapped around her little finger, this led to him nearly coming to blows with me and kicking me out of the house. I was out on the streets lugging around 3 suitcases. I stayed at a friend's place for the night and explained the situation to my mom and sister. They drove up to New Haven and helped me find a flat, and also vouched for me and my trustworthiness in front of Dad. But he was having none of it and cut us all off. Even worse, he threatened to cut off child support and alimony by throwing his fancy lawyers at us, and said that the only way he'd support my sister's college education would be if they agreed to go NC. He also said he wasn't going to pay one more red cent towards my graduation. For my sister's sake, we agreed, and I had to take out a student loan to make sure I didn't drop out. It's been 10 years since then, and our family has put Dad behind us. After my sister graduated, he stopped talking to us entirely. Honestly, none of us talk about him anymore except in the context of what a douche he was. In fact, I never even got to see him around in New Haven after I graduated, and honestly had no clue what he had been up to. However, all of that changed last week because I got a text from an unknown number claiming to be my dad, revealing details of my life that only he would know. Curious to know what had happened, I set up a meeting with him in a few days and then invited my mom and sister to come with me. They agreed, and we all went out of curiosity more than anything else. I was shocked to see how different my dad looked. He was haggard is probably the best way to describe it. Usually seen in a suit and with a fancy watch on his wrist, Dad was now dressed in a plain shirt and had lost all the bogey outfits. When I sat down, he immediately said, "Son, I should have listened to you." When I asked him what about, he sputtered, "About that bitch, Kiara." So it turns out that after he kicked me out, Kiara began to siphon more and more money out of Dad's account. When it was finally discovered by the IRS, she and the accountant bounced, leaving Dad to take the flak. The eventual realization that I had been telling the truth all along was too little too late to save his ass. He was charged and sent to jail for a year, and his whole business sank to the ground. After he got out, he had to start from square one and left New Haven due to the hit his reputation had taken. Apparently, he was now settled in New Mexico, running a struggling business. As for Kiara and the accountant, they were nowhere to be found. Dad even tried to hire a PI to bring them to justice, but his trail ran cold after discovering they had moved somewhere in Thailand. I was sympathetic to his plight, but at the same time, I was thinking, I told you so in my head. I couldn't get the image of him kicking me out of his house out of my mind. When we moved on to talking about other things, I mentioned that I had been doing well in my career. I was a little skittish about it because I feel like Dad wanted me to extend a helping hand of some kind. I was right because he ended up telling me he was looking for investors in his business, and I politely declined. I could tell that he was too embarrassed to push the topic, but his mood dropped like a stone. After he left, I felt like I shouldn't have shut down his plight for help so quickly. I mean, it has been 10 years since the incident. Would it help to start our relationship again? Update 1. So, a few days after the call, I got a call from the local correctional center. Apparently, Dad had been drunk in public and hurling obscenities. For some reason, he gave the cops my number. I went over to bail him out, and he had sobered up. On the car ride back, he burst into tears about having nobody in his life. I felt really bad, and I asked him to come to stay over at my place for a bit, at least for as long as he's in New Haven. Update 2. Dad's been staying at my place for the last few days, kind of like a reversal of my time in college, IMAO. I've gotten to learn more about his business and his life, and he's been screwed over badly. But his work in New Mexico has potential, to be honest, and I feel like investing in it won't be the worst idea. However, I kind of want to confront Dad about his behavior with me at first and get an apology. Update 3. I was able to have a heart-to-heart with Dad, and he regrets not apologizing to me first things first. He apologized not only to me, but also to Mom and my sister. Without getting into it, we seem to be on a better track than we were all those years ago. He might have been a terrible person, but this experience seems to have changed him. He's heading back to New Mexico next week, and I'll visit him in a bit to discuss his business. NTA, you've got a big heart, OP. Although Hank seems to have changed as a person, I wouldn't be able to form a relationship with him after what he did. But you're right, 10 years is a long time. NTA, but I hope your mom is cool with the olive branch you've extended. Next story. I, 15, female, have been wanting to get a job for a while to save up for this car I want. It's in great condition and at a reasonable price, $5,000. I have chronic pain issues, and part of those issues are sitting in one place too long. I like to be active. Well, I was going to wait a year to get a job because I go to a school where you work for the school, and I'll have my CNA by the time I'm 16, and my starting pay will be around $18 to $20. Minimum wage in my state is $14.24 an hour. Anyways, about the conflict. My sister, 20, female, hasn't done anything since she graduated high school in 2020. She isn't in college, and she has never had a job. She also doesn't have her license. We are not rich and are a one-income household. My mom works 2 jobs and sat us down recently and said that she is exhausted and that working 2 jobs, most days she's working 17 hours, is killing her and really affecting her mental health. She said she knows it's a horrible thing to ask her children, but if one, if not both of us could get a job and help out, that would be great. My sister threw a fit, saying that this was too much and that she wasn't ready to get a job yet and that I had to because I'm more capable than she is. I told my mom that I would be more than willing to get a job, but that my sister has to as well. My sister continued to throw a fit until I called her a lazy piece of shit and that she was useless. She attacked me and then ran upstairs to hide in her room. My mom said she understands and that she will talk to my sister and that this responsibility should not be put on a 15-year-old, but that I shouldn't have said what I said. Edit. Thank you so much for the responses. I really appreciate other people understanding my chronic pain. I showed my mom the post. She laughed at most of the comments about my sister, LOL. My mom sat my sister down last night and said she's giving her 1 month to get a job or move out. My sister got angry and said she had nowhere else to go, and my mom said, Not my problem. My mom has stopped paying for everything that has to do with my sister, subscriptions, games, etc. I am going to get a job for myself, already applied to a farm I want to work at. The first month of working, I'm going to save some money, and if my sister does get a job, I will contribute some. I said above that I'll be a CNA by 16 and that in the junior year we make more than minimum wage, so I'll only need this job for a little over a year, and then I'll be making more than my mom makes at her second job. I have a long way ahead of me, but I'm excited about what I'll be able to do with my nursing. Also, when I get my car, we already had an agreement that I have to pay for my own insurance and gas, so I need to save more money aside for that. It may seem unfair to some, but my sister will probably contribute 50% of her paycheck and me 15% to 20%. NTA, what kind of person wants to put the responsibility on a 15-year-old to help when they could? You were right in what you said. Your sister is a lazy bum, that's it. She should have to get a job as well. Next story. My 20-year-old son, who at 18 moved to live in the country 6 hours away with my parents after he graduated high school, started to feel lonely, so he got a puppy off some farm. Shortly after that, he decided he wanted to come back home. So he did, puppy and all. Then he got a job working on the road and wasn't home for nearly 6 months. During that 6 months, I raised and trained this amazing border collie. I'm her human. She's my life. She's incredibly intelligent and very well trained, as I've always been good at training dogs. Then my son comes back from the job on the road and picks back up with his dog, but she loves us both. However, he just starts playing video games 15 hours a day, talking to a girl he met in the video game and not giving her the attention she needs. She's very highly active. I take her daily to the park to throw the frisbee and get her running time in. He then is home for another 6 months and then decides he wants to move from Texas to Maine to live with the girl he met in the video game, even though they had never met. So then he finally gets a job, saves enough money to get a plane ticket, and leaves. I ask him, what about the dog? He says, well, you just watch her for now and I'll come back and get her in 6 months or so. I know this will be so hard and I'm very against this. I'm already so attached and pay for everything. I offer to buy her $500 to help with his trip. I beg him, crying and pleading. It's cruel to her, too. This is her home. We have another dog. They are best friends. She sleeps on me every night. She goes with me everywhere. We are incredibly close. I've never been so bonded with a dog. Well, the 6 months is approaching and he's talking about coming to get her to live in an apartment, and he works 6 to 7 days a week supporting the girl that doesn't have a job and her family. I want to just say no, but I love my son and it is his dog at the end of the day. I don't want to hurt our relationship, but I know he won't take care of her like she needs to be taken care of. And I'm her world, too. My son gets super angry anytime I bring it up that I think it's wrong to take her. I'm so distraught over this. AITA? Edit to clarify. I have tried to talk rationally to my son many times. I've been firm. I've tried to appeal to his common sense and I've begged in full tears. Every day just thinking she'll be gone soon kills me. It's just a very strong no, it's my dog from him. I told him I wasn't going to watch her when he left. My family gave me grief that I was being unfair and should help my son, so I agreed, after a huge blowout fight. Now that I want to tell him no, he can't take her, my 19-year-old daughter, in college and at home, also says, well, it's his dog, Mom, you can't do that. She is starting to see my side, though. The dog is obsessed with me as I am her. I just work and spend time with the dog. That's my life. I'm divorced and give her my full attention. I also have my roommate and my daughter here, so she's rarely ever left alone. We have a big yard for her to run. My son does say he's paying me back for food, toys, vet costs and everything, but has yet to do so. And when he was home and not working all the time, I was the one paying for everything. The first time he was working on the road, he did send money to help. Money shouldn't matter anyway. He sees it simply as it's his dog. End of the story. I don't want to lose the relationship with my son either, but he thinks I'm the asshole for even arguing about it. Go get the dog chipped in your name and outright refuse. That dog is going to be trapped in an apartment all day. That will wreak havoc on its physical and psychological health. Pets don't deal well with moving. He has constantly neglected the dog. The dog will suffer if he takes it. At the end of the day, it isn't his dog. He abandoned it for 6 months, doesn't pay any of the bills for it, etc. It is effectively your dog, so you can keep it. NTA. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.